All right. We'd like to welcome you to the Intern Whisperer, the show all about the future of work and innovation. Today's Intern Whisperer tip of the week for employers. Remember, employers, that mentoring goes two ways. Your wisdom is passed on to the student, and you can also learn from them. You want to know how? It's going to be, they will help you to identify process gaps and training gaps when you slow down and you pay attention to what you have to explain to them. You go, gee, I wish I had actually put that in some type of a training program. Today's guest is Mario Simauchi, one of the owners with Get Up and Go Kayaking. Welcome, Mario, to the Intern Whisper again. It's so nice to see you.
Thank you for the invitation. I'm glad to be back on the show.
I am excited to have you here. Our show is all about, just as a refresher, education, innovation, business, and the future of. We look at what are those jobs and the industry is going to look like in 2030. And Elizabeth is one of the associate producers. She's going to kick this show off with us.
Yeah, so good afternoon, Mario. I was curious about your educational background and your first job.
Well, nice to meet you, Elizabeth. My education is actually focused in international business. I actually went to Rollins College here in Winter Park, where I got a BA specifically in international business with a focus in global franchising. And right after college, I went off and started working with Hilton Grand Vacation, where I was then led off to start in a position as a pricing analyst with NBC Sports, where I did some time. And after that, I
You
found
make
this.
it sound like you were in prison. You did some time.
Well, well, if you are an entrepreneur, you definitely know what that is or what that experience is, right? Not saying that it's not great. It wasn't a great experience. By all means, I learned a lot. I evolved a lot from all the jobs that I had, but I always wanted to work for myself. I always wanted to pursue something more personal and something that was really identified my sweat and tears for what I was delivering, right? So yes, I did my time with all these companies, and after that, I ventured off to do my own thing.
How about this? How about if we consider they trained you well at their expense so you could be an entrepreneur?
Boom. This is
Okay,
with
so
that.
just reframing it so that maybe when you're talking with them, you can say, I learned so much and I appreciate all the money you invested in me.
Yes, yes. I actually look. I know, and I've actually ended every relationship, every work relationship that I've had to transition out of. I've always left with the door open. I think that's something very important in any career or anything that we pursue is how do you foster those relationships over time. I actually, after I left NBC Sports, I went off to work, or I did this for three, or what we're going to talk about today. I created one location for Get Up and Go Kayaking. After 3 years, one of my previous VPs from NBC Sports contacted me to work on a project with him in DC, which is why today I live in DC after founding one of the locations in Florida.
Oh, wow. You're beginning to be a United States traveler. Maybe you'll have a business in every state. I'm not sure.
You should come to Oregon.
Oregon. There's a lot of opportunities in the West Coast. I was
Yeah.
just in LA a couple of weeks ago. Same thing. There's just a lot of opportunities currently in the for people who want to be outside. So
Mhm. All right, so you're an entrepreneur. What are some of the, or all of them, if you want to, the ventures that you started? Because you and I met when you had interned with me, and that was super cool. And you had so many great ideas. And then you came on the show as a business owner also, and you were sharing some of those businesses. But I think that you've transitioned. So let's talk about all of these fingers in the pie that you have, so to speak.
funny enough, I had just started my first company when I was last on the show.
Mhm.
And I ventured off. I started working with a couple manufacturers in China and then later on in Peru. And eventually it just wasn't working out. Like the margins weren't really, I wasn't meeting my expectations. I was just losing a lot of money, and I had to find something that would suffice my my entrepreneurship. I was working for a company 9 to 5, and I really wanted to find a way where I could completely devote to a bigger purpose and be able to grow a team. So, Get Up and Go Kayaking actually came around right after we had spoken. A couple months later, Justin, which is the founder of the brand, came up with this great idea 2 years prior to that, and was doing super well. He went viral, million views on social media, all over the web, and he started wanting to grow even faster. Us being colleagues through our NBC Sports careers, we had a conversation. I like to think that he listened to some of the advice that I gave him. Me having the expertise in franchising, it was definitely a conversation that I had brought up, and if I remember correctly, I basically told him if he did this, I would buy into the company. He comes back 2 years later. We're just having lunch, and then he also says, "Hey, by the way, this is now a franchise. Are you going to buy it?" Not really his exact words, but that's how I took it. And I was just eager. I was like, well, I did say that. I do want to pursue this. It's a great brand. He's doing such a great thing with it. And I see so much, I saw so much potential. I actually was not into kayaking at first. He's like, go check out some of the locations, see how it is. What do you think? We had just a relationship between numbers, NBC Sports, and our experience as working together for 3 years. And I believed in it. I believed in him as an entrepreneur, and how he just was so devoted to it. He used to actually work 9 to 5 with me, and then after he would clock out, basically he would go work doing tours himself sometimes. So until he started hiring for more help, was it that he was able to delegate and move on into more of the branding, and where he can really focus his best energy at, which is creating content and really representing what the brand offers. It's this clarity into a window of nature. And it's something that we haven't been able to experience on a regular kayak. So there's just so many locations and so many places where you can grab a paddle, a kayak, and go explore.
Mm. So what's your other business that you're in DC with now?
So in DC, I've actually was working on a syndication project where syndication is it's a practice of using investors' money to put together real estate projects. In this case, it was housing through apartment complexes, and they grabbed it through team. We were able to move a portfolio from 2,000 to 15,000 units within 6 months. And there was a lot of brain power. There was a lot of great talent. I got to meet a lot of great people, and it wasn't just not a business. It's just part of the brand that I represent here in Florida. I actually, during the same time that I was building Get Up and Go Kayaking Rainbow Springs, I opened up a real estate group in Central Florida where we started managing Airbnb properties and turning properties into investments for outside investors in Utah and Arizona and New York and New Jersey. So we would host their properties here in Orlando in return for certain ROIs and profit shares at the end of the year.
I'm kind of curious, when did you get your real estate license also? Is that a regular one, or did you have to get a broker's license? And do you have to get that in every state? I'm not sure, because you mentioned a lot of states.
Yes, so it's all works through referrals, and because we control the transactions in Florida, I only need a real estate license here in Florida. Similar for our partners and our referral partners in other states, they'll need their real estate license in those states to be able to declare those gains. So everything that I receive is basically through a Florida entity. And yes, to answer your question, I do have a real estate license. I got that back in 2018. I don't need a broker's license because I do work within a brokerage with partners. So yeah, it works alongside everything in real estate. Really, it's a lot more of contracts and the leverage between the people, the lawyers, the closers. So there's a lot of moving pieces of people, in other words.
Mhm, mhm. All right, going back to you, Elizabeth.
What we got into this a little bit towards the beginning of this question, of the last question, but why did you get into the kayaking business?
Yeah, it's really interesting because he doesn't kayak, right? So that
But
would be part of it.
Yeah, you said you didn't.
Cover it, but I guess he learned to like it.
I
Mhm.
really, what's funny is, once again, I listened to this interview we had this morning, and I thought it was, wow, a lot has changed. And it's really because there was a lot of change during my last couple months with one of my previous employers, and it was because I was spending a lot of time inside, dedicated to my work, that I wasn't physically receiving a lot of vitamin D, accordingly to the doctors. And that is basically based of the lack of sunlight, which
Mhm.
doesn't make sense here in Florida. I mean, we receive so much sun. So when I'm hearing this and trying to digest this from the doctor, I'm just like, well, I need to fix this real quick. And once again, Justin came in at the right moment, presented this opportunity, and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna go kayak, check it out. Once I tried it out, I'm like, all right, this is really fun. This is different. At first, I felt very insecure, and eventually, I started to like it. Thrill of just trying to find a place, trying to find somewhere where we can do this and replicate what he had created. Just just created this adventure between it all. And today I can easily just grab a kayak, throw it in a water, and just go kayaking like nothing, or even standing paddleboarding. And before I wouldn't even do that. So really, it has to do a lot with the vision that I saw behind the brand. I can't say, and more, and not even the brand, also the entrepreneur. I really think that Justin had a lot to offer, and just really needed help. And I was excited. I was excited for a new adventure.
Mm, that is really good. I have done kayaking, single, and also double. It's always a lot of fun. I mentioned to you before we started the show that I've done stand-up paddleboarding, and so I was sharing that story. I'm going to go ahead and share it for the purpose of the listeners because I think that people don't always know, oh, this looks like fun, and they may not think through all of the things that, ooh, what's dangerous underneath the water. And if I had a clear kayak like yours or a clear paddleboard, then I might be able to see things more clearly. So we'll talk about that clear stuff in a minute. But I went paddleboarding, and it was at dusk. We were leaving the dock at dusk and going across the chains in the Winter Park, where Rollins College is. We started at Dinky Dock, and then we went over into the Maitland chain. Anyway, she said, yeah, not many people do this at night because gators are out. And we were already launched and en route. And I went, well, okay, not going to worry about it. If my number's up, my number's up, but let's just keep going and enjoy the thing. But I did pay attention to the fact that I needed to keep my legs not in the water, just so gators. I don't know. It's something to think about if you're in Florida for sure.
Oh, for sure. Anywhere in Florida, I would say I'm not so worried because the lake that you're referring to, I'm familiar with. I'm not super afraid of gators in that water, but then again, in every body of water in Florida, the odds that there's a gator is very high.
Oh, yeah. Well, we know that there was that horrible accident years ago where a 2-year-old, I believe it was, 2 or 3-year-old, was on Disney property, was attacked by a gator and killed. So we have at Rollins College a ski team, and there's always a lot of activity in this water, Elizabeth, just so you know. And Mario and I both went to the same college. And as such, I would think that because there's a lot of activity, there's boats, there's, people skiing, there's inner tubing, all kinds of things going on. It would keep any activity at a minimum, I would think. However, at night, anything's open for grabs, including legs. I don't know.
Yes. Well, I do have to say this. gators, right? Gators,
Yeah.
alligators only eat once a week. Doesn't mean that they can't eat more than once, but what I'm saying is they're not an aggressive type that is going to go out hunting every so often. Now, what they are going to go for, their type of prey is usually the size of a baby. Like
Turtles.
no, like they will go as far as eating a dog, a baby, a 2 year old. So the reason why I bring that up is because yes, that might have happened in Disney property, but once again, child shouldn't have been left alone or
Yeah, it was near the edge of the water and it was like in a place where it was highly populated. So you're absolutely, I mean, the parents, I cannot imagine anything worse, right?
right. Yeah, but it's just once again, especially if we're talking about water, we're in their habitat, so we got to respect it. So it is what it is. We're just borrowing it or using it while we're out there, right? So
Yeah.
I've heard the
Yeah.
stories of Florida, like you always hear, the stereotypes of Florida that there's a gator in every lake or every toilet,
true.
there's a mini alligator just like crawling up there. I never really believed it, but maybe I do
Not
now.
so much in toilets, but in waters, yes. In waters, I would think that gators eat more turtles and things of that size too, because how often can they grab a child or a dog? It's not going to be that great, or a cat. But I would think they probably eat a lot of turtles and birds.
turtles,
If you
birds.
guys have, sorry, what was that?
I was just emphasizing what Isabella was saying. Turtles, birds, fish. That's usually what they go out for prey.
Yeah.
There's this old sci-fi movie. It's horrible. It's called Lake Placid. Have you heard of it? Is that similar at all?
It sounds familiar. Lake Placid is in isn't it a town in Florida actually, Isabella?
No, it's in Michigan, I think, Lake Placid. But that's a horror movie and it's about something in the deep in the lake and eating people. And I don't watch those movies, but apparently Elizabeth knows it and she must have watched it.
Mm-hmm. I think it's about spoiler alert, it's about a giant alligator that keeps eating people. And I think it's Betty White that like fed her husband to the alligator.
Oh my God.
It's really, it's horrible. It's horrible. Like old 90s sci-fi that you just cringe at, but
Just to be clear, Lake Placid is in New York. I just Googled it. So now I said Michigan, I was somewhat close, but still wrong. So anyway, all right. So going back over here, what is the biggest challenge or threat to kayaking as a business? What do you think it is?
Weather is something that we would never control. Definitely, if it's raining, if it's thundering, if it's storming, we're not going to be out there. But if it's cloudy with a decent sun and light out, we'll definitely go be out there adventuring.
Do you think people go out there when it's cold, our Florida cold? Like, we have December, not really, but December, January, February, March, maybe. March is kind
They do. It's surprising. We actually, being in Central Florida, we're always going to be receiving the tourism traffic that Orlando, Tampa experience year round. Therefore, we get some of that love and get to entertain the guests that come from up north, from Europe, and don't mind being out in the winter, being out there paddling at what is Florida winter going to be like? The coldest, maybe 65 degrees. Uh, right?
that sounds lovely. Yeah.
Right? 65. By the way, the water is 72 degrees Fahrenheit year round. So some of the guests would actually prefer to be inside the water than outside paddling. So it's definitely an attractive experience for many in the winter. Some of our locations actually have the manatees come in for the winter. So until March, end of March, we get to do different activities. Guests get to see them from beneath their kayaks. So it's definitely, depending on the location or area that the tourists are in, they'll be able to catch those.
That's
Wow.
cool.
It's magical.
I do want to slip this question in here. I'm going out of sequence. It wasn't on there, but but I did tell Elizabeth, I really want to know. So where do you get clear kayaks? Do they cost more than regular kayaks? Do they have to be maintained? I'm thinking it's like Cinderella's slipper. It's like glass. I know it's really not, but like, what's the story on, because I think that is just like so brilliant to be able to be in a kayak and go, oh, look at that. There's something that just swam right underneath our kayak.
Right. And we're just getting started. I want to say we're just getting started in the creativeness behind our equipment. And Justin and the team have had such a great intellectual mind between all of this that we're actually manufacturing ourselves, the brand manufacturers, the equipment. We do retail them on our website for about 1500. And how do you maintain them is really just making sure it's rinsed off with fresh water after each use. And the basics, not using shoes on top of them, and not putting sunscreen while you're inside the kayak. Apply it before you even get on the kayak. So simple things, but it goes a long way. And our kayaks will go as far as we don't need to change them out every so often.
Hmm. Do they have screws in there? How are they? Do you still see all the metal parts of how you assemble it?
So we actually it's actually very similar to almost like the cockpit class used on planes. So
Okay.
it's a mold. The mold is held by a gray bar, and yes, there's some screws that hold that mold firm. But then it's just removable seats that you just put on top of the kayaks and are able to take them off after each use, and everything else is just removable. So you can set up your seats either in the middle of the kayak, in the back. Obviously, in the back of the kayak, it should go because you want to maintain some more weight on the back than in the front. And it's very easy to use and maneuver.
Hmm. Okay. I did not know that did you guys create them? Is it like your own creation?
Yes, or to a degree, right? There's other distributors already out there, but the actual manufacturing of these specific kayaks that we use today is done by the brand. Was done by the brand.
Okay. Very nice. Very nice. Back to you, Elizabeth.
Yeah. How has your business been affected by the pandemic?
Honestly, it's been a blessing in disguise because it just reminded a lot of individuals of the importance of being outdoors and the sanity and relief that it gives everyone. Something, an experience to share, an experience to meditate and just be out there around nature. So people are really loving the aspect of being outdoors today more than before.
I would think so, yeah. Because having to be held what feels like being hostage in your home and limited to just a certain amount of people. I was discussing this yesterday with somebody else, like a person on the street, really. And I was saying, I think that it was probably as close to that same Stockholm syndrome of creating a prisoner and making somebody feel like a prisoner in their own home. Not really quite the same because that was with prison guards and obviously people pretending to be prisoners too. But that feeling of being locked up, it's got to be pretty close to what somebody else in jail or in prison would feel because you're in these walls. And granted, you have social media, you have access to some other things, but every day has to feel the same. And the ability to go out into nature and to do something that is physical and you're breathing fresh air and you're getting vitamin D and all of that good stuff has got to be just truly something that liberates the soul and makes that heart sing, I would think.
I'll say this, if you let me add to that. For example, at Rainbow Springs, every day on the water will be different. The water that you see one day won't be the same that you will see the next day or the previous day. Rainbow Springs pumps out on average 800 million gallons of water, fresh water daily that we're able even organically to pick up and drink if we wanted to. and it stretches out for seven miles. So that's a lot of water, but the scenery is always going to be different. The
Is
discharge,
it,
out that it comes out, it's going to look different.
does the water come from the aquifer? Where is it coming from?
The water comes from the aquifer, staying at 72 degrees Fahrenheit year round.
Wow. Interesting. Where is Rainbow Springs?
Rainbow Springs is located west of Marion County or west of Ocala, Florida, basically northwest of Marion County.
So it'd be like going up to Gainesville, between Ocala and Gainesville?
West of Ocala before Gainesville.
Okay. And now I know of another place to go check out. That's pretty cool.
We have a lot of
I
gators.
don't know.
Go ahead.
Sorry, no. Oh, you go.
I was saying we do have a lot of gators come down. And when I say gators, students from UF always coming out to Rainbow Springs. It's just a 45-minute drive from Gainesville.
Okay, when he's saying Gators, Elizabeth, he means that's the fans that go to University of Florida. Their mascot are Gators, and so it's like chomp chomp, go Gators. But he's making a little play on that. For our listeners who may not know that, it's not the real animal gators. He's talking about Gator fans from University of Florida.
University of Florida students did not kill that child in Disneyland. I feel like that should be said also. Different gator.
That was the real animal. Yeah, that was really, really sad. Okay, so I think that you've talked about this one, what led you to become passionate about the environment. I would say probably that particular venture into it, but where you're from, I think we should go back to your roots and like where your family is from and all of that, because it did not start always just here in America. You're pretty well traveled, and so you've been in a lot of places. So I think you have been out in the environment quite a bit.
For me personally, it's always been important to give back to a degree. And what better way to do it than with nature, with our environment, with our habitat. I come from my mother's from Nicaragua, my dad's from Peru. They're both considered third world countries. So every time coming back to visit their home countries, I would always experience this somewhat of a culture shock, because what we have in the US is not even a quarter of what these countries are experiencing, especially today. Today, these countries are being ran by so much corruption, and it feels hopeless for a lot of the individuals out there, for a lot of family members and and people still living in these countries. But it really helped me in my growth process to see this or experience these cultures, because it allowed me to value it even more and to really understand that at least for example, at Rainbow Springs being such a town where it has a lot to offer through just specifically this river, we want to care, we want to conserve the amount of land that's out there. I can share that last year there was a huge development project that was proposed in town, and about more than 800 acres were acquired to promote the idea of a beautiful resort on the water. It would have brought in a lot of economy into the city. As a business owner, I understand that, but it would take away the actual beauty of being surrounded by a foresty area, by a lot of trees that hold a lot of homes for different animals. There's over 14 different types of birds out at Rainbow Springs that we get to see on a daily basis. So all of that would have been gone just from chopping a couple of trees and putting a couple of tiki houses up. But one of the most beautiful things that this developer did was he listened, and he heard out the town, and he made sure that everyone had a say into what was best. And the development didn't carry forward. We were proud of being part of that voice and sharing our thoughts. So till this day, Rainbow Springs continues to share that beauty. So yes, my background has helped me grow in that process of admiring the beautiful parts that we experience here, at least in Florida in the US. But at the same time, I'm still actively doing today. I sit on Keep Orlando's Beautiful's board here in Orlando, which is just another extension of Keep America Beautiful, not NGO around the nation.
Really important. Our
Mhm.
environment was here before humans, so we should respect the boundaries of what they offer us. It's just so sad to me to think of a world without the ability to visit the natural wonders that we have, but also to enjoy the wildlife that's out there and respect the wildlife. Yeah, I definitely want to be able to travel to more places in the United States, but also outside of the country and go see places like the Great Chinese Wall. Like, I want to go see that. And I know you've traveled. You have traveled.
Yes, I've been to the Great Wall of China. I've been to Machu Picchu. I've been to
Well, you lived in Peru. Well, you visited Peru. Yeah.
right. Peru was by far one of my favorite experiences, and it was shortly after we had met on our last interview, where I had gone to go meet with a couple manufacturers before I decided to go into this venture with Rainbow Springs. I had already seeked out the location. I already had my I had everything settled with my partner. We were both on board. We already had permits with the city. We just had to sign documents to buy into the brand and everything else. And I remember just one day I was working with NBC Sports. The next day I was on a plane to Peru, spent the mountains just a month just backpacking through Peru from the desert to the city into the mountains. And I literally had just to say to myself, Mario, this is it. Like you got to make a decision. And I just remember saying something along the lines, what if what you're imagining turns out to be better than what you expect? And it grew so much in myself that there was more of an opportunity here than what I was seeing. And I just really believed in the whole concept of clear kayak, and also most importantly that I was going in with a partner today that's been awesome at what she does, Samantha Ham Gardner, and the guy who created everything, Justin Buzzy.
Nice that you gave them a shout out. That is so good. Well, I know that you covered one of our other questions, which was, pretty much like, what would you say to those looking to get into kayaking? So you answered that one for sure. I think we only have one other question. I'm going to send it back to you, Elizabeth. Number 8. Go to number 8, please.
What is the importance of parks today in our hypermedia world?
It's a necessity to reground ourselves. And when I say that, it's just as simple or silly for some, what it sounds like, regrounding ourselves. It's essential for thinking of the basics, breathing, feeling, hearing, seeing things. And when I say things, it's just the most obvious, like animals, otters swimming from one side to the other, a gator swimming beneath your kayak. It's something that we should all experience, and it connects us so much more to ourselves and to Mother Nature, that the parks that we are marketing, at least from our business side, are essential for our community. So Rainbow Springs has been ranked before among the top 10 national or state parks in the nation. So that's just one example. Silver Springs has been used so many times for movies where they create timeless memories. I would say they've recorded movies like or series like George of the Jungle, the Creature of the Black Lagoon, a James Bond movie, Moonraker. So it's parks are important because they allow us to step back in time, see, re-experience history, and most importantly, connect ourselves with our senses, our nature, and really your Mother Nature overall.
For sure. So often I find myself and I see everybody else just like face down, head into whatever technological device we have at the moment. And so often we don't look up and see just kind of the beauty of the world around us and just the natural simplicity. So often we overcomplicate ourselves with so many tasks and things to do that it's really hard to kind of just take a breath and take a moment and experience the beautiful world around us.
It's hard when everything it depends on a notification, right? A notification catches you and it's really can distract you. But it really just depends on oneself. It takes a lot of I don't want to, it takes a lot of practice. At the end of the day, it's a practice where we just need to make sure that it's helping ourselves versus affecting us. So
Hmm.
understanding when to put the phone away and really to take this in is necessary. And I think this segues to a comment that you guys mentioned off camera, like are people coming in and connecting or are they just coming in for pictures? I'll tell you that we see both. This is such a beautiful place where people just want to grab pictures anywhere they can. But once they're in there, once we make them work out for 30 minutes upriver and feeling what it is to be surrounded by nature and knowing that they shouldn't stop because there's somewhat of a small current and that we're gonna stop soon to go grab some pictures. People get excited. People seek that adrenaline, that small rush of adventure through our paddles. So I would say it's definitely we see both. We see both people connecting and people just coming out for the pictures.
Yeah, well, the pictures are lovely and they do help make a memory also that's there. So I think that's significant. We're going to take a brief moment to acknowledge our sponsor, Cat 5 Studios.
The Intern Whisperer is brought to you by Cat 5 Studios, who help you create games and videos for your training and marketing needs that are out of this world. Visit Cat 5 Studios for more information to learn how Cat 5 Studios can help your business. Thank you, Cat 5 Studios.
So we're back to our show and it's all about internships and remembering, what that experience was like. But I know we've talked about this in a previous show. So we're going to kind of bypass the internship story and just look at the future of work. So what do you think, Mario, the future of the kayaking business, we can even include it paddleboarding if you want, anything that's outside, but specifically your business, would look like in 2030? What do you think parks might look like in 2030? And we have some interesting statistics if you want to share your opinion first, but I can bounce some of this back to Elizabeth and she can talk about some of the trends that she found in some market research. What would you like to do? You want to share your opinion or here's some of this research?
Well, I mean, you could share some of the research, but I would just, from the top of my head, I would say the parks are not going to go anywhere. They're here to stay. Some of these are going to be national monuments to a degree within their cities. And when I say monument, it's because they're being kept and fought for by different organizations that are just trying to preserve land, specifically in Florida, because it's just starting to get developed in different places. But aside from that, technology is a plus for the way the staff members, the organization that is really operating the parks are able to control the manpower that they need and simplify some of the things that we don't get to experience out there in nature when they're just not allowing any Wi-Fi or any internet. A lot of these cabins at the state parks, for example, they don't have Wi-Fi.
Oh, thank goodness.
Which is good, which is great. But however, internally, there should be some power where their staff members are being able to simplify things and automate things for the guests and people coming in. So I see progression within the parks and if anything, more representation or more of amusement behind it.
That sounds good. Elizabeth, what did you find about just some statistics?
Yeah, basically from my research, I found that the future of kayaking looks great because a lot of people are having more. There's been a huge surge in participation of like water recreation sports, getting out there on the lakes, on the oceans, and there's a lot of that is due to people having more disposable incomes, more cash just kind of lying around, I guess, that they want to spend. And it's going to create, from what I found, immense opportunities for the kayak market over the next 10 years. Kayaking is emerging as a really popular sport in developing countries, and lots of families and individuals are now engaging in it. And it's something that a lot of people, I think, can do, because it doesn't require a whole lot of training, I would say. At least this is from my perspective, but I don't think it requires a whole lot of training and like extra class time. It's something you can kind of like kayak, like you can buy a kayak once and then have it for potentially a decade or so.
Yeah, and I would say it's not that maybe they had all of this cash laying around, it's because they couldn't spend anything last year. So nobody was able to go to events, to movies, whatever. So the ability to go out and do something that was outside in nature, again, exercise, fresh air, vitamin D, all of those great things that we were talking about earlier, that's huge, because, you know, that's what people actually need to be doing. More things outside, less things on their phone, and less things that are sedentary.
This is true.
Yeah. So Elizabeth also found something, an opportunity to kayak with sharks in San Francisco Bay. That sounds terrifying. You thought it sounded super cool, and you would do it. Tell me why you would do that. That is horrifying to me.
I think the ocean is something that we should always respect. However, these animals would be just amazing to see up close. And obviously with respect, but I would find through in being able to see them up close, especially from beneath a clear kayak. That would be awesome.
A kayak, yeah, but you know, I don't know. It's still, well, it's not a surfboard, you know, but it's still like, oh my gosh. Have you ever seen those pictures? I'm going to jump to this different type of a scenario, but you can do this. I think it's in the Grand Canyon, and then there's, I think, someplace in New York where you can do it. And you walk out, and it's like a glass floor, and you're looking down, and you can see that giant, like, oh my God, I could fall experience. And to me, that's what it would feel like. It's like, oh my God, there's an alligator right underneath my kayak, that is, or a shark. And I think I've heard of more sharks attacking boats, you know, or people out in the ocean, than I hear of alligators. So I don't know. It just sounds more scary to me.
I think there's just more water, or more ocean water, than there is fresh water or swampy water, where the amount of gators versus the amount of possibilities of shark attacks. I would love to see those statistics in regards to numbers, because I'm sure there's a big gap. But I would say that the media is the one sharing that news, in the sense of the percentage is so low.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. We know we'll get hurt in a car accident more than we will in a shark or a gator attack, right? We know that. Logically, I mean, it just makes sense.
Yeah. But it's a natural creature that we don't get to experience so often. And if there's a safe way of experiencing it and seeing it up close, and being a part of that experience, then I think it should be done, or I would take part of it.
Okay, so you're going to be reaching out, I'm sure, to sharkstewards.org. It's a nonprofit, and you will see if you can set up a get up and go kayaking business out there, and you will be the first one in the kayak, is what I'm going to guess.
The first one in the kayak.
Into the water with the sharks.
Well, I mean, the sharks are closed to no, but I'll definitely be out there paddling for sure.
Okay, all right. Well, now we're going to go jump into what the future looks like, because that was just something that was one of those random outliers. And I went, okay, this is interesting. I want to know more about that one. So we brought that one into the show. What do you think about robots that deliver snacks and groceries to people that are in parks? Because we know that drones can do that. I can't imagine that they would allow drones to be dropping things like that, because of just, you know, flight restrictions and things of just having drones flying around in a state park. But I'm trying to picture this idea of robots where there's limited Wi-Fi and internet, and I'm thinking, I don't know, do they need that? I'm not sure. What kind of robots would these be that are delivering groceries to people in parks? Elizabeth, you found this Where did you find the source, and tell us more about it?
Oh, it wasn't a source. It was me walking around a park.
What kind of a park?
It was just like your local, like, I'm gonna take my kids the grass and there's trees and like dogs pooping. It's like one of those like
Oh, a
family
city
friendly
park.
parks.
Yeah.
Yeah, like a city park. Yeah. It was more on the edges, so it was like sort of wild, not really. Like there could be a couple deer hanging out. But yeah, I was just kind of walking around and I saw this like weird sort of white ovally thing, and a family walked up to it and they pressed a button and out came out of this tray just like a bunch of groceries, just like some bread and what looked like sandwich makings, the future of a picnic perhaps. And I was curious, like what do you think of that? Do you think that is the future? Is that just sort of like a random like
Oh,
technology?
yeah, that's for real. I know that's for real. Based on all of our research that we've done on other topics, robots will definitely be doing that. But what do you think, Mario? Are they going to be in the parks that you can foresee? I think Florida's always slow to adopt those things, so I don't know. Maybe in California, yeah.
Well said. Well said. Like response. It would take a while here for sure because there's a lot of other factors that subtract from that specific equation. Specifically, the taking. Yes, it may reduce the overhead for the parks and it would increase their margins at the end of the year, but that's not really what they're trying to do. They're trying to create jobs. They're trying to bring in more people to participate in the outdoors. So usually the people that are working out at these parks and these state jobs are actually the same folks who live within this community or are conserving the community throughout the years.
Mhm.
So once again, similar to what Isabella said, they won't allow the drones for sure. They don't do that today. They won't, maybe some vending machines that do dispose of these snacks or these sandwiches would be, I mean, I've seen some creative vending machines these days. So I wouldn't be surprised if they come up with something interesting. But it would take time for before robots can replace an actual park ranger for sure.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to be robots, and quite frankly, I don't want to see that happen because if I'm going out into nature, it's a conflict of interest to see something that is a technology or a robot, anything that's like that kind of technology in that place. I am wanting to get away from that, not find it where I'm trying to get peace, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
With technology comes a lot of solutions, but at the same time, distractions or not the focus. You forget about the senses that you are accustomed to use while you're out there in nature.
Mhm, mhm. Yeah, I think that there's probably places for, I don't think necessarily maybe robots, but one of the pieces of information that I found is that there is a soft robot. Engineers at Duke University have created this electronics-free soft robot that's shaped like a dragonfly and can skim across water and react to environmental conditions such as pH or the temperature or presence of oil. Now that I see has really, some valid purpose, obviously, because you could send something like that out. It's not going to harm an animal going out there, or even a person on a boat, maybe that you don't want to have going out into water that has some type of either, oil leak or some type of dangerous fluids, chemicals in there. The proof of principle demonstration could be the precursor to more advanced, autonomous, long-range environmental, they call them sentinels, for monitoring a wide range of potential telltale signs of problems in the environment. So using something that looks like a real thing that you would find in nature, it would be less, I think, what would be the word I would use? Less likely to stand out as something that doesn't belong there. It might even blend in with the animals and the insects that live in that environment. So it could be less disruptive to their world. I think that's the advantage. Whereas I don't know so much, you don't want to be sending something out there that is metal into another environment where it's all supposed to be environmentally friendly. So they're trying to find materials that they can create and use to produce something that is benefiting the environment rather than harming it or
Right.
taking away from it. So it was interesting to me. So just sharing that one. So we actually only have time for a couple more questions here. So Elizabeth, you want to pick one that you want and I'll pick one?
Yeah, something that I thought was really interesting, and I would love to hear your opinion on it, Mario. But there's a company, it's called Edge, and usually they just kind of create animatronic, like animal type things for like Disneyland or something like that. But a part kind of asked them, in order so that they wouldn't have to like capture any animal from the outdoors, they asked for them to make a lifelike dolphin. And so they did, and it's like 550 pounds, it's 8 feet long, it has AI technology, so it can kind of respond how a dolphin would, and it's controlled by a joystick, so it can still do tricks like SeaWorld. Like, what are your thoughts on that? Considering like humans kind of, we go into the environment and we do disrupt it sometimes when we do that. So, what do you think?
It's an interesting question. And
So SeaWorld with no real dolphins.
right, I mean, so are we paying money now just to go see robots? It really depends with time. We're also going to have to evolve our consumption habit. And when I say consumption habit, it's how we're receiving the type of entertainment. So for the environment, I think it's great because it's going to keep the dolphins where they're supposed to be in the first place, not in an attraction. However, for in a business perspective, as a consumer, intrigued, but but intrigued, but I'm just not sure if I want to go see robots jumping from the water.
Yeah, I feel the same. It's really also some of the things that they bring these animals in for is because they're not able to be released. And so they bring them into the parks because they would die in the wild. And they've trained them to do tricks so that it is a part of entertainment and you can see them up close where you might not be able to. And appreciate how smart they really are. You know, that's the part I think is there. Can you program a robot to do that? Absolutely. But can I train an animal to do that? That takes a lot more talent and work,
Yes.
interaction.
Well, yes. Everything you say is correct in the sense of they are doing a good deed, but there's more to that good deed, right? Why are they not ready to be out in the wild? I guess is the first question. And there's a lot of scenarios, and this is just another point of view or another conflict that I can derail into. But what I'm saying is there's a lot into what these organizations are doing and how they're using the animals that I think with time more NGOs and more organizations are going to start collaborating with them and finding better solutions and even better entertainment to serve both sides of the spectrum. With that said, I just think that we're going to see a lot of change within that industry itself.
Mm-hmm. Yep, I would agree with that. So what is the best mentoring advice that you would like to pass on to our listeners? I'm sure you have plenty of mentors, your dad, well-known quotes that you've read, you're very well read. So I'm pretty sure you have something to share.
So when you say mentor, you mean like someone specifically?
Oh, it can be just an inspirational quote. It can be something that your dad has taught you. It could be something that maybe one of your colleagues at work taught you. It can be from any place or anything, but I think a lot of people even consider quotes a part of mentoring to a certain extent because it began to set up a place in their life as to how they wanted to live their life and exemplify it.
Right. So something I shared with you, it's actually a quote that I remember hearing is, what if what we had imagined turns out to be better than what we expected? And I remember on our last interview, I brought up that I think it was the same question, but in a different format. And someone who had inspired me or someone who was
Mhm.
motivated me. And I remember responding bringing up, is it Matthew
Matthew McConaughey. Yeah.
McConaughey's speech at the Oscars where he talks about how his hero was himself in 10 years. And till this day, I keep saying that to myself in the sense that it's a reminder, it's just, I am not competing against anyone else. I'm just competing against myself. And everything that I try today is just to get better. I'm not perfect by any means, and nor do I do everything right. Like there's a lot of learning curves, there's a lot of change that has happened throughout my ventures, and a lot of folks just see the better side, right? The good stuff that we get to promote on social media, and it's just because that is what is marketable today in society. But I'll say that with desire, there is a seed that with consistency gets watered to unleash a beautiful dream that was persistently desired to become reality. And as long as we're always keeping tabs on what we're going for and what we want to accomplish in life, we're capable of doing that as long as we are persistent and consistent with it.
That's good stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Mhm. Well, we're at the end of our show. So how can listeners reach out to you? Is it on LinkedIn? You have an email? What is the website for Get Up and Go Kayaking? If you want to throw in your real estate venture in DC, feel free, but social channels, all that good stuff. How do we reach you?
Yes, so Mario Simauchi, that's Simauchi. You can find me on LinkedIn, on Instagram, on Facebook. If you want to reach out specifically for one of my ventures like Get Up and Go Kayaking, Rainbow Springs, Silver Springs, you can also find that on my website at mariosimauchi.com, or you can also go straight to getupandgokayaking.com, and you're going to be able to find at different locations, about 14 locations around Florida to this date, where you guys can find your next adventure on a clear kayak.
That is super great. I am very glad that you shared that.
This is somewhat of something that an experience that I've gained from you. I was privileged enough to be offered the opportunity to work with 3 interns from Rollins College this year and created my own summer internship program for them. So this summer, I'm on my 4th week of mentoring these 3 brilliant kids through an internship program that we've been able to create through our own efforts, our own teams. And I just want to give out a shout out and say thank you for being one of those mentors through my journey and showing that there's a lot into what we have to do as leaders and be able to give back to our community. So once again, just thank you.
Thanks so much. I appreciate that. And I'm going to reach out to you and ask if you would like to be in our pilot program too. I will practice that ninja sales skills that you taught me.
Okay. All right. We'll talk offline then. But yes, I want to say thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I'm very touched by that. Thank you.
Of course. And Elizabeth, also pleasure meeting you today. It's been awesome talking with you guys, and great podcast that you guys are doing.
It was great meeting you too. Thank you so much for being a guest.
Of course. Privilege.
And we want to take this moment to thank our sponsor again, Cat 5 Studios, our production team, Axel Aponte, and Elizabeth Herbert, who are both our associate producer interns. Video editing is Steve Neese, and our video interns, Raymond Ahmad Khan. We have Berkeley Walgamot and Mitsari Rosales. And then for our employers, this is just a shout out for our employers. We would love for you to visit Intern Pursuit at www.internpursuit.tech to learn how you too can get matched with amazing intern talent. And thank you for supporting the Intern Whisperer and subscribing to our show on Podbean or your favorite podcast channel. Thank you. Bye-bye.